Okay, what a crowd, and what a beautiful facility. This is not our normal spot, but we're so happy to be here at the Performing Arts Center. Yesterday, I know that many of you understand that we learned that we lost one of our club members and a community icon, Rick Foley. Our club will miss him, and I think there will forever be a hole in the heart of Bradenton. Please keep his family in your prayers, and please consider honoring his memory by volunteering your time to help our community, because I think he would have liked that, so please consider doing that. A couple of announcements as we get ready to go. We have a very good program today. Please mark your calendars for October 21st. That is our joint program with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance and our Manatee Tiger Bay Club. As many of you know, we have a new tradition here, and we issue a prize for the person who asks the most engaging question, okay? So we're going to hear from our panelists first, and then we're going to have a question and answer period. And during that time, whoever asks the most engaging question is going to win the Tiger by the Tail Award. And if you are the recipient of that award, you will get a tiger button to proudly wear, and you will also get a basket of homemade cookies that is sponsored every month by Cindy Unzicker. Her company is Bite Me Cookies by Cindy. So please get your questions ready. And remember, you have to be a member of Tiger Bay to ask a question. So most of you are members, but if you're not, don't worry. We have a 50% off sale today. You can join. Go to the back table, we'll sign you up, and then you can ask a question too. I always like to give a shout out to METV. Thank you for being here. They always record our programs, and they're always available on YouTube in case you can't get here, personally to hear us. So please go to their website at any time to catch up. Okay, on to our program. Thanks to Ben Bacher and his committee for bringing together this great program. We have 4 speakers here today, and I'm going to start by introducing them. Beginning, number 1, with Captain Todd Shear. Captain Todd Shear is the Manatee County Sheriff's Office Special Investigations Division. He will begin our program, followed by Stephen Kervanik. He is the Chief, Manatee County Public Safety Department EMS Division. Our number 3 speaker will be Melissa Larkin-Skinner, she's a licensed mental health counselor with Centerstone Behavioral Hospital. And then our last speaker is going to be Brandolyn Carnum, and she's an educational activist, and she's also a recovering addict. I'm going to remind everyone of the rules, please. So our speakers are going to begin today. Each of them is going to spend 7 minutes addressing the audience. At 6.5 minutes, I'm going to get very close to the podium, and I'm going to put a little pressure on them to please wrap it up. Okay, so I'll be timing them with my cell phone. After we hear from all the speakers, we'll have questions and answers. I would ask that you please line up behind the microphone in the center of the building here, because we want to avoid a lot of waiting time. We're going to have a lot of questions. We want to be sure to get to all of them. Please only ask questions. Please don't approach the mic with a statement, but let's ask questions if you're a member of Tiger Bay, and we'll get you the answers you need. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask our first speaker to come to the mic, and we'll go.
Thank you. In preparing for this speech, I was realizing a mountain of information that I had, and I practiced it one time last night, and I was up to like 20 minutes. So I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear me talking very fast. I have a ton of information I'm going to try to relate to you in my little 7-minute window, but if I go over a little bit, Chief VMS said I could take a few of his minutes, so I appreciate that. I'm basically going to give you the 101s of heroin, what we're seeing from the Sheriff's Office standpoint, and some of the things we're doing here at the Sheriff's Office. Okay, so heroin comes in 3 forms. It comes in the powder form, it comes in liquid, and it also comes in a black, sticky, tar-like substance. But what we're seeing here in Manatee County is the powder form. Usually comes in a white or a sandy brown. Recently we've seen it come also in gray. There's a lot of mixtures coming in with the heroin that we believe is coming in from out of the country. And to add to the discoloration due to some other agents that are being cut into the heroin, you know, back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we used to see heroin being cut with cornstarch, sugars, baby powder, a variety of things in there. But today what we're seeing is opioids and other things such as fentanyl being placed in there. And to add to the complexity of this, back in the 70s and 80s when heroin was on the streets, it was about 10% pure. Our lab tests that are coming back right now from the heroin we're buying in the streets of Manatee County is coming anywhere from 40 to 60%. I think the last lab report I saw was about 48.2%. So going back to the fentanyl thing, that seems to be a very big contributing factor to the deaths of the folks that we've been having here in Manatee County. Fentanyl is a Schedule II narcotic, which means it does actually have a medical purpose for it. It's also often used for treatments of cancer and chronic pain, unlike heroin, which has zero medical value whatsoever. And just to tell you a little bit more about fentanyl, it's 80 to 100 times more potent than morphine, and it's 50 times more potent than heroin. It's some serious, serious stuff, really bad stuff. And then when you're mixing it with heroin, you can see where it's going to end up. So we know by debriefing a lot of the folks that are buying heroin that the users and the addicts themselves, they're actually seeking out the fentanyl-laced heroin. As crazy as that may sound to us, but that's what they're doing. They want the best of the best. And so that's what they've been briefing us on. So how is heroin being used? You can either smoke it, inhale it, snort it, or inject it. Most of the folks that are overdosing obviously are injecting it. Most heroin addicts don't start out with injecting. Nobody signs up and says, I'm going to be a heroin addict and I'm going to start injecting. It just doesn't happen. Usually start out by inhaling it, lacing it with marijuana, and then as time goes on, they end up reverting to injection. Once someone tries heroin, they pretty much are going to be addicted to it. So it's not like marijuana. You can try it a few times and walk away from it, or cocaine. Not with heroin, not with the particular purity levels we're seeing now, and not with the fentanyl-laced heroin. So, and again, the problem to add to this is once a person does heroin, they reach a certain level of high, and then they continue to try heroin again to try to get to this exact same level. Well, the problem is they can never get to this level. The next time they try it, they're here. The next time they try it, they're here. The next time they try it, they're here. But there's that pursuit that they continually try to get to that level of high. We call this in narcotics chasing the dragon, and that's because the high they seek is elusive and it just cannot be obtained. Besides giving the user euphoric feeling, it physically changes the brain. When heroin's injected, mainly through the arm, goes to the heart, gets pumped up to the brain, and it affects the frontal lobe part of the brain, and that's the part of the brain that governs the consequence of actions. The part of your brain that tells you, hey, don't step out onto oncoming traffic, you're going to get hit by a car. Hey, don't pick up that hot cup of coffee, it's going to burn your mouth. So these are the types of things that it's doing to the user's brain. Cost. How much does heroin cost? Our street-level buyers are picking them up for about $15 to $20 a hit, which is about 1/10 of a gram. It's very inexpensive, very inexpensive. Pills now are going for about $25 to $30, so it's actually cheaper for them to get heroin on the streets. It's very, very affordable. So where's heroin coming from? Probably not a big surprise to us in here. It's coming from Mexico, Colombia. They're the world leaders in the production of the poppy plant, which is the derivative in which heroin is made. And then to add to the complexity of this issue, the United States of America has a $10 billion demand for this particular drug. It's huge. It's just not here in Manatee County. It's in the Northeast. It's in the Midwest. We're seeing it all over the United States. So what is the Manatee County Sheriff's Office doing about this? We're doing a lot of things, and I'm going to go down them as quickly as I can. We're providing specialized training to every single law enforcement officer on the front lines. Every deputy is getting extensive training through our Power DMS, and what that is they get educated for about 15 to 20 minutes on everything and anything regarding heroin, fentanyl, what to look for, and then a lot of other information that is classified that we can't share with everybody else here. We relay it out to them. Very critical to us that the frontline deputies get this information and relay it back to us, because Just like anything, sharing of information and intelligence is absolutely critical for our success in catching those that are trafficking heroin in our county. We also remind our deputies of Florida State Statute 893-21. Very important. It's also referred to as the Good Samaritan Law, and it just basically states that a person who is acting in good faith, who's seeking medical attention for someone experiencing a drug overdose, cannot be charged with or prosecuted for possession of a narcotic. So if you got somebody out there, they're both doing heroin, and your buddy overdoses, we encourage the other partner to call 911. We want to get life-saving measures to that person. We're not interested in throwing people in jail. We're interested in saving lives, and the statute protects them. And it not only protects that person, it protects the person who's overdosed. Just this morning, we have bi-weekly meetings initiated by the sheriff. Our Special Investigations Division and Criminal Investigations Division meet together bi-weekly. Very, very important to us because of the large number of overdose deaths. The Criminal Investigation Division is responsible for investigating deaths. And we share critical information we have regarding narcotics. And why that's very important is because if, under Florida law, a person who distributes a controlled substance to somebody, to a person which results in their death, is committing a first-degree murder. Very, very serious stuff here. And if we develop probable cause, we're going to move in that direction. So our narcotics units, they continue to work heroin cases daily. I want to say that again. They work heroin cases daily. Very active partners with our friends at the DEA, FBI, Sarasota Sheriff's Office, Palmetto Police Department, and also Bradenton Police Department. I'm going to go over some quick stats, and then I'm going to hand it over to Steve. Okay. Real quick stats. Thus far this year, starting in January, we've closed 114 cases that have been cleared by an arrest related to heroin and opioids, to include fentanyl. We've taken 620 grams of heroin off the street. That's valued at about $62,000. We have some major cases being worked right now, but we just can't talk about them for obvious investigative purposes. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about those in the near future. Thank you very much for having me today. One last thing. We equip every one of our patrol officers and certified law enforcement officers with these very important cards that we give to folks, to addicts that we come across, to let them know what resources are available in our community to make sure that if they need help, we certainly will give them a ride or do whatever we need to do to get them the resources they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Scherer. I almost forgot mine. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I appreciate that very much. And as you have heard, and as you're hearing, this heroin situation that we have in the county is permeating all areas of media right now: news, radio, national, and local. But, I'm going to put these on. Don't be confused. Opioid drugs come in many forms and are used by many people, and they really do have legitimate purposes. Unfortunately, that's where some of the problem begins. People, like Captain Scheer said, don't wake up one day and say, I want to become an opioid abuser. Usually they're precipitating factors. Many who find themselves in this situation are just like you and I. They suffer a traumatic injury, were prescribed pain medication, or had a procedure. But when the recovery is complete, they continue to seek and desire that opioid feeling, and it becomes overwhelming. The doctor then refuses to continue prescribing the medication because medically, you're healed. And now the addiction cycle has begun. Most people don't, again, want to stick needles in their arms. The cases we encounter are patients that have been snorting heroin as novice users. They do smoke it, and then eventually they do move to shooting it in various parts of their body. So let's take a look at Manatee County and see what, who, and where this crisis is really affecting. You might be surprised to find that the majority of overdoses are males. In Manatee County, 67% are male, 33% are female. You also find that over 90% of the persons that are overdosing on heroin are white, while less than 5% are of African American or island nation descent. Surprised? In Manatee County, the largest group that overdose can be defined as between 20 and 40 years of age, but there's a subgroup there, and it's between 40 and 60. And when I looked at that, that was rather surprising to me that population was also having those issues. That is a subgroup, but that is the second highest group that we're seeing as far as overdoses. Our oldest patients that we've treated for overdose in Manatee County had one that was 87 years of age, one that was 88 years of age. And this isn't users, this is an overdose. Our youngest was 17 years of age. When you think about the users as compared to the overdoses, you really have to think really how staggering the situation and the problem can really be. The numbers are just overwhelming. Remember, all Manatee County is affected. You can't hide socioeconomically, geographically, doesn't matter. Anna Marie Island, Lakewood Ranch, Myakka, doesn't matter. We've had them everywhere. Of course, there are areas that we have more of them, more densely populated, concentrated areas, but it really doesn't matter. So when did this start? How did it start? Manatee County has always had some form of substance abuse issue, much like every other community in the state, every other community in the country, every other population in the world. There's always some part of that they're having an abuse problem. But right now, it seems to be a heavy population here in the Tampa Bay region, the Orlando region, and over into the Daytona Beach region particularly. For instance, South Florida has no problem with heroin. Their issue is flakka. I don't know if you've ever heard of flakka. Yeah, flakka, quite honestly, we have no treatment for flakka other than supportive and take you to the hospital, where at least heroin we have a medication that can reverse it. So it really becomes a user-defined issue. In November 2014 is when we really started looking at this and seeing a real spike in overdoses in Manatee County. It was an upsurge. And we followed that through, all the way through 2015. We really peaked in June and July of this past year. And when you compare the overdoses, 911 related calls from July 2014 to July 2015, we realized a 1,554% increase in overdoses. Yeah, it's scary. So what does that really mean? We responded to 216 911 calls in July for overdose patients, and we administered 281 doses of Narcan. That's that medication that helps reverse the opioid effect, bringing the year-to-date Narcan administration to a total of 1,008 doses as of August 31st, costing $86,137. That includes, and this really was shocking to me, 35 repeat overdose cases just in the month of July. So that means they overdosed, went around the corner and overdosed again, got out and overdosed again. So that just illustrates the impact that this addiction has on these folks. Like the captain was saying, the frontal lobe is affected and they can't make rational decisions on their process. All these situations usually mean death. To date, we personally, EMS, have run on 21 DOAs, which means when we got there on the scene, they were DOA, long-term DOA, nothing we can do for them. Now, I'm sorry, I don't have Dr. Vega's numbers, but I'm sure he has more accurate numbers as to cause and manner of opiate overdoses in the county, and I'm sure they're probably a little bit greater than that when he does his postmortems. Manatee County EMS is a primary paramedic responder and will continue responding to all the 911 calls, whether it's opioid overdoses or a car accident. But what's nice is we began partnering with the Department of Health and other first responders, fire department, police departments, and to find other methods to deliver the Narcan medication that's so desperately needed for these folks that are overdosing. A very creative firefighter, his name is Firefighter Dunn from Cedar Hammock Fire Department, created a heroin referral card that the captain has showed you guys, which is handed to each overdose patient by EMS in order to start providing them some educational avenue, some knowledge that there is support and help for them out there. And it was really innovative and very creative, and every EMS unit has them, every fire department has them, every police agency has them. That's what we're looking for, professional intervention. That's really the best hope for these patients. And I'm proud to say our professional community is working hard at closing this cycle. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Larkin-Skinner from Centerstone. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer there, and I grew up in this community. So I'm very proud to be here, very proud to be a part of it, but what's going on right now is very disturbing and it hurts. And I imagine that now you're wondering why people use drugs. You may believe people use drugs because they're bad people, they're vagrants, they're criminals, they're weak-willed, just stupid, or perhaps evil. Or perhaps you know they originally used drugs because of a medical issue, as the chief discussed, or to impress their friends, or to cope with the terrible things that have happened in their lives, or to drown out thoughts and emotions that are too painful and beyond their control. Or maybe they use just to feel normal like everybody else. Some of you may have used a drug or two at some point in your life. If you have, I don't think that you're bad or weak or evil. I think that you're just human, and you had your reasons. Unfortunately, not everyone who tries a drug can walk away from it. Some can, but others can't, and they become addicted. It's estimated that genetics makes up 50% of a person's likelihood of becoming addicted to a drug. A person's environment and the developmental stage they're at in their life when they use make up the rest. You may be wondering exactly what it means to be addicted. It means drugs have changed the way your brain works. It means you have a complex, chronic, relapsing disease. It means you need the drug to feel normal. It means you need the drug to keep from getting sick. It means your judgment is cloudy and your decision-making is impaired. Addiction causes your drug use to become compulsive. Getting and using the drug becomes your primary focus in life. It causes you to completely disregard consequences. Normal things no longer bring you pleasure. The only pleasure is the fleeting euphoria caused by the drug that you use. Worst of all, as described by the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, you lose your free will. That's something that we all need and take for granted. I'm sure it's hard to imagine that you would ever give up everything good in your life for a drug. That you would steal from your family, from friends, and from strangers. That you would stop taking care of your kids. That you would trade sex acts for the drug, that you would be willing to risk prison and even death just for that drug. Many people would believe it's because you don't care enough, that you don't care about yourself or anyone else. I believe the real you would care, but with your brain changed and your free will robbed by heroin, you would only care about heroin. Heroin is an especially addictive drug due to its effects on the brain, as Captain Scheer mentioned. It has become clear that we are in the midst of an epidemic. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, it started in 2007, and it started in large urban cities like Chicago, St. Louis, and Philadelphia. And since then, it has expanded to suburban and rural areas, much like our own Manatee County. Deaths from heroin in the U.S. increased 5-fold from 2001 to 2013. The number of first-time heroin users doubled in 1 year from 2011 to 2012. and the largest increase has been in the 18 to 25 age group. Most experts believe the increase is partially due to a shift from using prescription pain pills due to heroin being cheaper and more readily available as an alternative. As we all know, the past year and a half has been rough for Manatee County. Our fellow citizens have been overdosing on heroin at an alarming rate. Many have died. Others have been revived by EMS, some of them more than once. I believe everyone is struggling to understand what's going on in our community. I read a letter to the editor recently that suggested perhaps the addicts want to die because they use again, sometimes immediately after being revived. The primary reason is that they don't want to get sick. The drug that the chief talked about, Narcan, that's used to reverse the effects of heroin is amazing. It saves people's lives. The problem for the person being revived is that it also causes them to withdraw from the heroin because their body has physically adapted to having that drug in the system. Withdrawal causes restlessness, severe muscle and bone pain, insomnia, gastrointestinal issues, vomiting, cold flashes, involuntary kicking movements, and intense cravings for the drug. I certainly wouldn't want to feel any of those things if I could avoid it. So what can we do? Prevention is the key. We have to get the word out, especially to our youth. Prevention programs involving families, schools, communities, and the media have proven to be effective. The message is that addiction can be prevented if you never use drugs. And treatment works. There are various types of treatment, including inpatient and outpatient detoxification. It gets people started by getting the drug out of their system. There's outpatient therapy. There's intensive outpatient programming that's 3 hours, 3 days a week. Partial hospitalization programming is 5 hours, 5 to 7 days a week. There's residential programming where people live in the program 24/7 for anywhere from 4 weeks to 180 days. And then there's medication-assisted treatment with drugs like Subutex, Suboxone, Methadone, and Naltrexone. When I first started my career, I doubted the theory behind medication-assisted treatment, and I imagine most people do. I always thought of it as it's just replacing one addictive substance with another. However, over the course of my career, and especially in the last 3 years, I've come to realize medication-assisted treatment is necessary for some folks that are struggling with addiction, especially to heroin and similar drugs. Research has indicated that medication-assisted treatment in combination with the behavioral therapies I mentioned can increase program participation, decrease drug use, decrease criminal activity, and decrease infectious disease transmission. There are 2 things I want you to take away from today. One, and the most important, is no one chooses to become addicted. It happens due to a set of unfortunate circumstances that's a combination of genetics, environment, and age. When a 10-year-old's asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" they never say, "I want to be an addict." 2, I want you to know there's hope. Every day people start on their road to recovery through treatment. And you can help. You can help by educating yourselves and talking about addiction to reduce stigma. It is believed there are 25 million Americans experiencing addiction, and we need to make sure that they feel safe asking for help. You can also help by advocating at county, state, and local levels to ensure our government agencies and political representatives understand the issues and provide adequate funding for prevention and treatment. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for coming today.
Hello, my name is Brandolyn, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. In 2009, when the pill mill epidemic was at its all-time high, my journey with opiates began. I had experimented with party drugs in the past, but nothing had the soul-sucking effect like oxycodone. With over 300 illegally prescribed narcotics on hand each month, I fell victim to them very quickly. It was extremely easy and cheap to get into one of these clinics. I myself wasn't a patient, but someone very close to me was. We didn't know too much about these prescription pills, but it didn't take long to learn. They were valuable, and our group of friends demanded them. As I observed everyone's method to using them, I eventually had found my own. They only talked about the euphoria they would get from these drugs, but never mentioned the withdrawals, nausea, chills, and pains, or the stealing and lying from your parents and soon pawning everything in sight. Days I would lay in bed, kicking and tossing, hot and cold, and had lost all hope. But there was only one thing that could take that all the way: a tiny blue pill. One was too many, and 1,000 was never enough. The pills started becoming harder and harder to get, and extremely expensive. I had lost who I was and only cared about the getting and using and finding ways to get more. Pretty soon, I lived to use and used to live. I was a stranger to my friends and family, no longer welcome at their homes. If I showed up, I was treated as a trespasser. Inhaling the drugs wasn't enough anymore. Now, instead of makeup and iPhones and things girls my age would have in their purse, mine was possessing and concealing crack pipes and needles. I no longer had a place to call home. Trap houses, gas station bathrooms, and sneaking to sleep in my mom's car at night were my usual surroundings. Excuse me. With pills becoming almost extinct and impossible to afford, heroin was making its comeback. Half the time it was almost fake because it barely did anything from being cut so much with who knows what. But when you're sick, you will take what you can find. After around 50 times in detox, a few times in jail, I was accepted to the drug court program. I had failed probation, and my only other option was county jail time. I had to be reprogrammed completely. I went back and forth to jail on sanctions, and I did a 30-day inpatient program and lived in a halfway house. I started to learn responsibility with getting to groups on time and being accountable for my actions if I messed up. During that process, I never gave up. There had to be a better life than I was living, and I knew there was because I had a great life before. Eventually, the more I listened to the suggestions and became honest with myself and others, I started looking better, feeling better, and eventually being better. It took some time, but I earned trust and respect back from my family, and the material things started to be replaced. Life started to become normal again, and in the beginning, the cravings and desire was too strong, so I sought help from an addiction specialist and took medication and therapy, which was truly a big help. Today, I am a mother, a loving daughter, a friend, and inspiration to many. It wasn't easy, but it was definitely worth it. I have dreams and goals again, and today I know I never have to use again. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to invite my panel to come up to the stage so we can quickly respond to your questions. And now is the time for questions. So please, if you have a question, come up to the microphone, state your name, tell us you're a member of Tiger Bay, and ask your question. And normally we allow a couple of questions from the same person, but because we have so many people here today, I'm going to ask that you keep it to one question, and then if we have time at the end, of course, we'll take a second one. So who has the first question? Okay. Jane, I knew I could count on you.
Jane Coker, I am a member of Tiger Bay. My question was, how long does the drug affect you physically? And, I mean, when does it get out of your system? And are the treatment programs long enough to outlast that?
And please tell us who your question is directed to.
I don't know.
Okay, so the process of addiction is a little bit different for everybody. But, so our detoxification program, the opioids take, the peak of the actual withdrawal is anywhere from 48 to 72 hours after the last dose. And then it takes a good 3 or 4 more days. The reality is that the changes in the brain last much longer than that, and it takes a very long time. So even if the drug itself is not in the system, it takes a long time to counter those changes that have been made in the brain. Does that answer your question? Are the treatment programs long enough? It depends. Some people, you know, just like the addiction itself is different for everybody, the recovery process is different. Some people can stop using it at home. I wouldn't recommend it, but they can. And then go into outpatient treatment. Not everybody has the support or the environment to do that. So some people need 4 weeks. Some need 3 months. Some need 6 months. Some need 18 months. It just depends.
Hi, Judy Sedgman. I'm a member of Tiger Bay. I was just curious to know whether the drug that reverses heroin works when it's cut with a lot of other weird things that, you know, you mentioned so many times now you don't even know what's in there, and I've read a lot about the chemicals that come in from China. Nobody even knows what they are. And I wondered if that affects the effectiveness of that reversal.
It's a very good question. That's what we had been referring to when the captain had mentioned about the fentanyl also. The cut and the potency, the purity of it has a lot to do with that. We find ourselves at times giving multiple doses of the Narcan because we're not getting the desired patient outcome. And there are patients that have been taken to the hospital who then have been put on IV strength Narcan just to keep them breathing until it passes through their system. And the thing about it is you don't really know what it's cut with. So, you know, and when we give the medication and that we don't get the desired effect, then we have to continue dosing. And that's been happening frequently, quite honestly.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Bacher, and I'm a Tiger Bay member. My question is for Captain Scheer. Could you expound maybe a little bit further on the strategies and programs that the Sheriff's Office and law enforcement are currently implementing to kind of follow the trail back to the dealers? So when you're finding them, how are you making ways to kind of find out who is actually distributing this?
Sure, that's a great question. I wish I could disclose a lot of the details to this answer, but you know, we've seen a lot of success, and there's really no real big secret to it, Ben. It's you know, we start, you know, from the typical street level deal, and a lot of times that goes to their dealer and then goes to the next person's dealer. So it's a progressive investigative thing that we have to do. It's not always the same tack that we take. We use a lot of strategies. We take advantage of technologies. We take advantage of informants, confidential sources, intelligence. So we have to gather everything we can, because you know, it's like playing a card game, and the drug dealers have 50 of the cards and we have 2 of the cards. It's very difficult to be able to track some of these guys down. They do a ton of counter surveillance. They have a lot of money. We know that this particular drug's coming from Mexico. And just to give you an example of how it's very challenging for us is our southern border. It's very, very porous. And if you're familiar with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, it really opened up our borders to a ton of traffic. A report out of our own government says there's about 5,000 trucks that come across that border every day, and the government's only checking 5% of that. So think about that. I mean, that's a lot of trucks that are coming through that aren't getting inspected. So, and it's really nothing to our cartel leader, because if they happen to catch some at the border, that's okay. 95% of it's coming through, and they're making a ton of money. And again, it's a $10 billion demand here in the United States, and since the marijuana is drying up a little bit here in the United States with the legalization of marijuana in some states, the Mexican cartels are joining up with the Colombian cartels, and they're taking full advantage of it, and they're making a ton of money. And it's our initiative to focus on the traffickers. We're less concerned about the users. Let me be real clear about that. We are focusing on the head of the snake. And sometimes that takes time. I mean, it's frustrating sometimes to sit up here because I can't disclose to anybody in this room except for the gentleman over here in the uniform over there. He knows. But it's a little frustrating because we'd like to be able to tell you a lot more, but we just can't. We got television here, and I don't want to give anything up that is currently pending in any of our investigative strategies. So I hope that answers your question, Ben.
Hi, my name is Matt White. I'm a Tiger Bay member. This is for Brandolin. First, I want to say congratulations and thank you. I can only imagine how difficult it is to stand up here and bare your soul to a room full of strangers. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, so I've spent many years sitting at the table in my office with persons, such as yourself, that are going through the addiction, their parents, and so forth. And I have my way of saying things, how I explain it, and I take it from the lawyer side. This is what's going to happen to you. This is where you're going to go. But I've been there with clients that they go on probation. They test dirty. Now we're back in court. They go to jail. Now we're going to drug court. I've been through that. So my question is this. What could someone like me or a family member or anything like that, when you're in the throes of all this and you're pawning and you're stealing and you're going through this, is there anything we could say or do that might help get you on that path? I mean, what does someone need? What do you need to hear from a lawyer? I'm selfish. I want to know what could I say to someone as they're sitting there and I know they're going through this? Is there anything I can say or do that would help move things along?
The thing that helped me was tough love. Once my parents and everybody around me made it so hard for me to use, instead of enabling me by giving me a place to stay and use there, or just letting me take advantage of them, once they kicked me out and I had no other options and it was just tough, I didn't want to do it anymore. So I suggest tough love.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Vernon, member of Tiger Bay Club. My question is for Brandolin. Was there one event, one day, one moment where you said, that's it? And maybe as kind of a follow-up to that, has anybody asked you your opinion as to how to correct things, how to get a better program, what kind of program you'd like to see others have?
I really didn't have like one moment where I just had an epiphany and wanted to stop. I really never wanted to be in that place in the first place because like I knew I knew that I had, a life that I was supposed to live. I wasn't supposed to be, some junkie just panhandling and shooting up. I wasn't supposed to be that. I don't know if somebody has specifically asked me how to better programs in Manatee County, but I'm
Good.
okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jim Whitman. I'm a member of Tiger Bay, and for 7 years I was the psychiatrist at the largest detox facility in Manatee County, which is the county jail. And now I work for the second largest, which is Cornerstone, Centerstone. Used to be Manatee Cleanse. It says Cornerstone over there. My question is also for Brandolin and anyone else who might care to answer. Detox from drugs at the jail is a medical intervention, not a psychiatric one. But after that, frequently I've had hundreds of patients in the jail setting who have had to deal with the consequences of drug addiction, and particularly the prolonged detox that Melissa was talking about that can last for months to a year. During that time, sometimes psychiatric medication is helpful. But I just wanted to mention one thing and wanted your response to this. As I said, I've treated hundreds of folks, and I often saw them on their way out. And the most common response from them and statement that when they had a chance to make it was, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to get clean. Thanks for being treated humanely in the jail setting. So I was wondering how that figured with, I know you were in and out of jail many times. I don't recall ever meeting you there, but because is that part of the tough love, or is it a negative part of the system? I'd be very interested to know.
Detox in jail was horrible. It was, they don't make it easy and they don't make you comfortable. You're crammed in a small cell in medical with 3 or 4 women and no, medication to kind of take the edge off. And it made me not want to go back there. So, yeah, I guess you can say, making it tough like that in jail does make you not want to go back there. But then it kind of makes you angry at the same time because there's no kind of treatment and rehab in jail. You're just going to get clean time. You don't have very many programs for, addicts in jail, except for NA comes in maybe once a month, I think.
Clean time isn't enough.
No, it's not. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Andre Torkelson, Tiger Bay member. I just had a quick question. I'm not sure exactly who the best person to answer it is, but I was wondering if you're currently working on ways to get people not to jail, but to treatment. Are there programs affordable? People obviously who are addicted aren't working. What's being done to kind of tackle that issue and bring in some more opportunities?
So actually in this community, we're lucky. Centerstone and the county and the sheriff's department and the other law enforcement agencies have an agreement for people who they run across that are addicted or intoxicated. And then there's a state statute that allows them to implement what's called a Marchman Act. So law enforcement can do that Marchman Act, and then they can bring them to Centerstone Hospital. The problem that we have is the demand is far outpacing the actual resources. So when I talked about all the services that are available, they are available, but at a price. Not everyone can afford 3 months, 6 months, 18 months in residential. Some people can only afford detox.
So is there an opportunity there for, what's the...
Possibly. The county does provide some funding for people who can't afford it themselves. The state does as well, but it's not enough. The opportunity is advocating with county, local, state, and federal governments to make sure they understand the breadth of the problem. So I read recently that the Obama administration approved $2.5 million for the Northeast for prevention and treatment programs, but $2.5 million is nothing. And so while I appreciate that people are talking about it and they're trying to do something, that's not enough. And it costs, I believe I read $700 million a year in lost work for people who can't work because they're having addiction issues. So it's an expensive problem that can be addressed by additional funding that would way offset the cost, if that makes sense.
And I have a follow-up question for you on that. My name is Becky Kness, and I'm a member of the Tiger Bay Board. I'm also the CEO of Just for Girls, and we used to be a recipient of the youth substance abuse tax that was passed by voters here in Manatee County. When that was last calculated before it was eliminated, it raised $1.7 million, and that was a 1/8 mil. So I was real proud of our county for the voters for approving that tax, and knowing what we know about youth substance abuse, it's a 3-pronged approach: prevention, treatment, and incarceration. And you've talked about treatment, you've mentioned incarceration, and I was so happy to hear you say advocating with our elected officials for prevention. Prevention is the least expensive and the most effective. What do you know is happening with prevention programs now that youth substance abuse initiative is gone, and what can we do to restore the third prong, the most effective and least expensive piece of this issue back into our approach?
So in our community, we do have prevention programming. It is funded by the state, where we have staff that go into all the elementary schools and some of the middle schools, I believe, and maybe some of the high schools. But we're working with the Manatee County Substance Abuse Coalition, who, of course, spearheads the prevention efforts in our county. And we're working with them to make sure that we're in every single school doing prevention. And it isn't even just about prevention with youth. It's about prevention with teachers, educators. It's about prevention with their parents. So, for instance, one of the campaigns is Don't Host, I believe it's called, to try to get parents to understand that if they allow kids to drink in their presence, it opens the doors to all kinds of things that are bad with addiction.
I'd like to ask Brenda Lynn if she would respond to and tell us what you experienced in the way of prevention here and what thoughts you might have that could have helped you avoid making that choice initially.
I remember in school, they would show some things about drugs, but I don't remember DARE ever coming in or, showing the truth of what really happens. I think if it was more graphic and they told you what's really going to happen instead of just showing pictures of your brain and stuff, I think it would benefit more, but I just don't think it's graphic enough for the teens maybe.
I think you're doing a wonderful job in your advocacy, being an ambassador on this issue, and I hope to see more of you out there in a leadership role. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hoyle, Fire Chief with Cedar Hammock, and I'm not a member, but I'm going to use my member. I'm the guest of Nick Zeck over there. It's his birthday today, so we can take my question out of the competition. But I want to share a little bit personal story first, and then I've got a question for Brandolyn and maybe Dr. Skinner. This has touched my family pretty close, so I've had to go through this. It's cost us lots of money and things like that. And what the detective was saying, people's ability to think when they're using this, logic does not work. So when you sit down, the attorney was talking about, you deal with logic. When you sit down and talk to these people about logic, you just get in the way of you taking care of your kids, your family, it's destroying your future. All they hear is the wall that's between them and the substance they want to get to. They can't process that. It's not logic anymore. And when we talk about getting sick, to actually get a grasp of what sick is from these drugs, and talked about who here has bone pain, and opiates kill every nerve in your body. And when they go into withdrawal, all that is starting to come alive again, and you're getting pain in these bodies that's probably 100 times worse than what you'd think of as pain. So that's what's driving these folks. And if you go and read blogs of people that are in recovery, talk about feeling like their skin's being peeled off, and these type things. So that's what the high they're chasing the dragon, but the other side is not getting sick. And after a while, that's what's driving them anymore. It's not to go through that. So how do you reach these people? And we had a close family member dealing with this, and again, it's like this person's making these choices, and somebody said they can't make that choice anymore. And when the light bulb finally comes on for you, the only thing that they can talk about, and I heard Brandolyn mention this, is talking about love, but how they feel. They become very isolated because now everything revolves around this drug. And then they become basically very selfish. And it's not, again, the logic doesn't matter. It's only about how they feel. So if you can talk to somebody and take the, say the cat's out of the bag. We know you're addicted. I know you've used. I know you're going to use again. I know you're going to get sick. I know this is going to happen. So let's talk about what we can do to help you. And I think the medications today are very important. And if you can get that person when they're in that low to say, are you ready to get help? And if you can get that help, they've got medication that will stop that sickness, and then you can get into a manageable period. So my question would be, if you have any advice as to how to speak to someone, and what was shared with me is you can only talk about feelings. you know, how the person feels is the only thing that they're going to react to. So if you can catch them in that moment to try to get them to get help. So.
Kind of lost thought on the question.
What was your question again?
Just the question.
So the question is, how would you advise to speak to someone if you had to go to a friend now who's at their lowest point? From what you've experienced, what would be the turning point? What would be the logic, if you will, to help them get and take the help?
Honestly, all I can do is lead by example because I deal with a lot of friends that are still using, and I learned that they'll get me high before I can get them clean. So I can show them what to do, where to go, and, you know, tell them my experience and how I did it. But it's really one of those things where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, you know? And it's also my mom's birthday. Thank you.
All right, and I want to thank our panel very much for being here, and thank you all for, oh, we have one more question? Sure, this will be the last question.
Pat Benson, a member. I know you mentioned marijuana's drying up, legalizing marijuana, especially for health issues. There are 5 countries in this world that have legalized heroin. What do you think about that aspect? If we're drying up marijuana, can we dry up heroin?
So just to rephrase this, what are the potentials of us legalizing heroin in the United States? Well, based upon everything we've just discussed here today, I think that would be just terrible for our country, to say the least. I don't know what to say. I don't think that's going to solve anything. That's not going to solve anything. It'd be interesting to see what their violent crimes are like, what the statistics are like, because at one point heroin was legal in the United States. It was created in 1898 in Germany, and then before we knew the level of addictions that this drug caused, it was treated for it was actually in a cough syrup at one point. So actually, up until about 20 years, it was banned in 1924. And the reason was because of the addiction levels and the rise in violent crime. So I think you would see a return of that. I think it's safe to say our past is an indication of what might happen in the future. They're finding success by legalizing heroin? Wow. I don't know. Sure. They have the money now because they've got the funds. Sure. To treat the addicts. Okay, well that's the key component there is the funds for the treatment. And this country does not like to give money.
We're not going to get into that.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. Marijuana use is not drying up. What Captain Scheer was talking about is the market for the Mexican drug cartels, the Colombian drug cartels. Their market is drying up, so they have switched to growing opium poppies in their fields. So I didn't want there to be some confusion about marijuana's not a problem because it's legalized, or the use has decreased because it has not.
All right, so with that, we have heard from our panel. They were excellent today. If we could all give them a round of applause. Good job. I really appreciate the person who told about his family member, because I am going through a family member who's struggling, and I've talked to so many people who have family members who are struggling with drugs. So removing that stigma, as I heard you say, is very important. It's a disease. All right, now I'm going to ask Mr. David Teitelbaum, a member of our board, where is David Teitelbaum, to please come up here and tell us who won the Tiger by the Tail Award. No, we don't have 2 packages of cookies, just one.
Just one?
Just one, yeah.
The winner is Pat Benson.
Oh, well. All right. Can you give her, please, the prizes? And please, our next program, I hope you'll be here, is October the 1st. The subject is cybersecurity. Don't forget about the 28th, where we're going to be out at Lakewood Ranch. Hope to see you all then.